Okay, welcome guys. Week 16 today. Major topic that we're going to discuss is on natural selection. Interesting topic. Natural selection is a process that is part of the theory of evolution proposed by Charles Darwin back in the 1800s. So today we start off talking about evolution, and next week we get into it in more detail. Before I begin on the class material, just remind people, whether some people are going to watch the review of this lesson, that today in class I said bring along a copy of your in-class report draft. I can have a look at it, I can give you feedback. Some of the things we do in class today on the board will help you in filling out some of the criteria for that report. And you'll also get a chance to ask questions about, well, I'm not sure what to put in for criteria 2.4. And so I can help you do that. So if you've got your drafts there, that's going to make it really easy to just fill in those gaps. While I'm talking about this in-class report, so you have your draft today, I give you some feedback. What you do is you go away and fix up the feedback, make sure you address all the criteria. And then it's a process of reducing it down to 100 words. So you come in next week with 100 words written on a page. They are the key words that is going to make up your summary that is going to help you remember what to write. So before you start this in-class report, I'll say, count how many words are on your page. Put the number, it's got to be 100 or less. If it's more, I just cut the page off. Then you sign to say how many words. That's what you use. And that's submitted at the end of the report. Now remember as well, during writing the report, you will have access to the criteria sheet. And the criteria sheet, I said, has the criteria laid out in almost the exact format that you can present your written report. So that might help you think about, well, what words do I need to put into my 100-word summary and what can I rely on in the criteria sheet? Questions relating to that? Can I just check, Billy? I think you've got something happening there on your laptop.
Yeah, I've got my draft on my laptop.
All right, good. Just checking, what organism did you choose?
The bilby.
The bilby. Daniel? How's yours going?
Good. I'll send it to you straight after class.
Yeah. Well, you've got when we go into discussion mode near the end of the first session, if you've got it open there, you might have questions where you say, I need help to address some criteria, and I can help you do it in class.
All right.
Good. Okay. So what I'd like to kick off with is the image. I better share it with you. We can see it, but you can't. Okay. So our friend, the giraffe. There's an image there of a giraffe living in its environment. And it's actually behaving at the moment, doing one of its common behaviors, which is feeding. I'd like you on a page to write down what are some obvious features that the giraffe has. Maybe 3 or 4 obvious features, like not just everyday features that animals have, but ones which are specifically different about giraffes compared to other organisms. So that's the first thing we're looking at, is obvious features. All right. Daniel, what did you write down first? You still with me, Daniel?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. They have really extended legs and neck.
Okay, so long legs, long neck. Billy, do you have something written down?
Yeah, their coat colour. Same
Okay.
colour.
Their coat colour or colours
Yeah.
pattern.
Mm.
Okay. Anything else obvious? What about a feature? It can be a structural, but what about other things like pretty hard to pick out physiological ones, but what about behaviour? Go back to the picture.
Opportunistic feeders.
Opportunistic.
No, they.
Well, what do they feed on?
Do they always eat trees?
Is that they
They eat
basically
grasses as well.
are leaf eaters. Yep. Yep. It's a lot easier for them to eat leaves than to eat grass.
Yeah.
You can see they're surrounded by grass, but it's feeding off that tree. What can you tell about that tree, Daniel?
Sorry.
What can you tell about the tree?
The tree's been stripped before, and
Up to what level?
the level of the giraffe's head.
Okay, so the other feature you can pick out here is that giraffes like to feed on the leaves of certain trees. All right.
It looks prickly.
That is prickly, yes. All right. So we can just go to and put here. They feed on tree leaves. All right, there's some obvious features. Now, the next thing is we say, look at these features and identify how those features may be adaptations. So what's the difference, but how do we define when a feature is an adaptation? What's the feature got to be doing for the organism?
Help it survive. Help it eat.
Yep. Okay. So the words we used was help it to better survive in its environment. So, can you pick, go back to Daniel, one of the obvious features, and can you say, first of all, what type of adaptation, so the type, first of all, give me an example of the adaptation. So that's number one. Which of those features is an adaptation? Secondly, what type? Yeah, go on.
An example of the adaptation would be it's long neck, so
okay,
it can graze.
Okay, long neck. What type of adaptation? Is it structural, physiological, or behavioural?
Structural.
Yep, structural adaptation. All right, and the next question is, how does it help it survive?
It can graze off trees and hard to reach plants.
Okay, and yep, graze on leaves of taller trees. Yeah. So that why is that going to help it to survive?
And it's dry.
Yeah. Well,
Trees.
possibly because they're the only organisms that can reach it.
Yeah.
Okay. Tall trees only reached by giraffes. So they have what you might say, for those leaves, they have less competition for that food. So when food gets scarce, if there's plenty of trees, there's a better chance of survival. Okay. So the next question is the big one. Question 4. How did giraffes get long necks? So this is, I'd like you to provide your explanation. Your explanation could be just something you think of off the top of the head, or it might relate to something you've learnt before. But I'd like you to come up with, okay, we know giraffes have long necks. How is it that they have long necks? You can come up with your own theory, or you might like to use a theory that's out there already, of which there's several. I'll let you make down a few points. You can either write it in a sentence or put a series of dot points to maybe show how you think that's going to be. Still working on it, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm just finishing up.
Okay. Well, Daniel, when you're finished, I might get you to read out, if you don't mind, what you've come up with. As I said, there's no right or wrong here. It's just an explanation that you thought of.
Yep.
So how do you think giraffes got long necks?
Over time, as giraffes graze from trees, the trees become scarce and grew taller, so slowly their structure adapted to this change.
Okay, so just tell me if I've got this right. So they're walking around and they're reaching up to the trees to get their leaves, and as they grow, they're doing a lot of reaching and stretching. So during their lifetime, it's like going to the gym. They're doing a lot of stretching, so their necks grow longer.
Yeah, and then this happens over tens of thousands of years.
All right. So let's say a giraffe that's been stretching its neck all its life, and then has offspring. Does it then pass that long neck onto its offspring?
Yeah, that does.
Okay. And so that offspring may have a long neck, and then if it's stretching all the time, then it's going to, when it grows up, will have a strong and long neck. And then if it reproduces, then you may be suggesting that it will pass the long neck onto its offspring.
Yeah, that's.
I put words in your mouth, or is that what you're thinking of?
No, that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay. Yep. Righto, let's listen to what Billy's got to say.
I think I'm sort of the same thing. Okay. Over many years, giraffes which couldn't reach the tall trees died off.
Yep.
In dry times, and giraffes which were able to reach survived and bred on.
Okay. So you both said something that part the same.
Yeah.
When I was extracting information from Daniel, I said, oh, well, you said they're stretching up to get these leaves. Does that give them a long neck while they're growing, and they pass that on to their offspring? So how did you feel about that comment?
I feel like it's more of a genetic thing. Like there'll be some that naturally had shorter necks and some that naturally had longer necks, and over time they survived and it kept getting longer and longer.
In a population of giraffes, some are going to be born with a medium-sized neck, but some, by chance, will be born with a longer neck.
Yeah.
So you don't have all giraffes with the same necks. It's like when you look at people, we're not all the same. There's quite a variety. And those with the longer necks will naturally be able to reach the higher leaves. So we've got two similar ideas, and both these ideas were actually out there in the scientific community around the 1860s. The first idea was suggested by a naturalist. The name's just escaping me at the moment of him. It will come in a moment. But his idea was to explain that giraffes got long necks because during their life they stretched their necks all the time. By that, all that stretching made their necks longer. And when they reproduce, because they have long necks, their offspring have long necks. And so over a longer period of time, many generations, giraffes got long necks. So that's called the use or disuse theory. If you use something a lot, then it will be developed and you'll pass it on to your offspring. Now, it wasn't Wallace, still kind of get his, Lamarck was the fellow's name. So Lamarck came up with this theory, and everyone thought, oh yeah, this sounds pretty good, that makes sense. But then if you apply Lamarck's theory to yourself, you can be someone that goes to the gym 4 days a week and buffs up, and you're really fit and strong and got the Mr. Universe physique. But then you go and have some children, and you may have sons, but they just grow up to be normal shape, unless they go to the gym. So there was pretty soon they realised that Lamarck's theory had holes in it. It sounded really good, but they said, look, we need something that's going to be clearer. Now, you have to remember back at this time, like they were only just inventing the microscope, and they were just starting to see cells, and they didn't understand about chromosomes and genes and genetics and inheritance. Like all that was going to be discovered in the late 1800s. And even when it was discovered, the person who discovered it didn't know how much he knew. But his invention, or not his invention, his discovery about genetics, he wrote it all up in a book, and it was shelved for 100 years, and it wasn't rediscovered until someone by chance found it in a library of a monastery. So Lamarck's theory went by the wayside, and another theorist or naturalist, an English naturalist, Charles Darwin, he came up with a different suggestion, similar to along the lines of what Billy said. And you said that in amongst the population of giraffes, some will be born with long necks, but some might by chance have an extra long neck. And if the food gets scarce, the ones with the longer necks will be able to reach the higher leaves, with the others, like you said, they will miss out. And if it's really drought, then they will actually die off maybe before they reach childbearing, where the tall ones will survive, produce offspring, and they inherit that long neck gene. So there was this idea that they would pass on this trait, but the trait was produced by chance. We're going to learn that these traits are produced by chance, are caused by what we call mutations. They happen all the time. All right, so this process that we're talking about, the explanation is summarised by Lamarck's theory, Darwin's theory. Now, we should just mention that you can ask a lot of other people what they would say, and depending on their background and probably maybe what their religious beliefs are, some people will say, well, giraffes have always had long necks because that's the way God created them. And they'll put on the planet, they had long necks, and they had long necks so that they could be the ones that could feed on the tall leaves in the trees. Well, they have their religious belief, and if it's tied to their understanding, their belief of the creatism theory, then it's hard to convince them sometimes. And I'm going to be presenting more of the scientific theories of evolution. So we've got your religious ones, we've got scientific ones. Scientific ones are more based on evidence, scientific evidence, where religious ones are more based on maybe what's written in a Bible or some historical reference. And what do you think is the best evidence for say, this process suggested by Darwin, that the giraffes have developed necks longer and longer over a long period of time? Where's the best evidence of that going to come from? Either Billy or Daniel? So like we can see giraffes now, and if we went back, say, giraffes have been around for probably millions of years. So what were they like 500,000 years ago or 1 million years ago? It'll be the fossil record. You can't deny what we find in the fossil record. And the amount of fossils we're finding, we're still finding fossils every day. People are finding fossils because we're out there digging. Whether it's a new road or a building or a bridge or something, they're out there digging, and people are exploring further into hard to get places, and they're still finding fossils. All sorts. Could be the footprint of a dinosaur, it could be the fossilized bones of a giraffe, or it could be microscopic fossils of bacteria or organisms that used to live in the ocean waters. We're finding them all the time. And when people find them, they study them and they write up, this is what I think it means. So there's a huge amount of evidence in our fossil record. All right, so our explanations that you've got yours. I'll just go to a new page and we'll talk about possible scientific explanations. I'll just take my jacket off because it's going to interfere with the board. So possible scientific explanations. And I said two. One I said is sometimes referred to as the use/disuse theory, which was originally put forward by a gentleman named Lamarck. And the suggestion was that stretching causes neck to grow longer. And the basic point was that this was then passed on to the long neck was passed on to offspring. And yet this happened over many generations. All right, that's that idea of Lamarck. Explanation was one that is called the idea of natural selection. Theory. So it's a theory, it's an idea which is used to explain, and this was put forward by, well, it's interesting, Charles Darwin gets all the credit. Charles Darwin did his work over about 25 years, and he was a bit of a procrastinator. He had his book all written up, but he kept going back to his book and just fixing it up. And then he heard there was another, I'm not sure if it was an American or someone else in Europe, his name was Wallace, and he heard that Wallace was going to publish the same ideas with the same theories. So both these gentlemen, they were working, I think, in quite different countries, but were coming to the same opinion about how nature, natural selection theory works. Darwin's got all the acclaim because he got in first, and what helped him get acclaim was in it he said something to the tune of that humans had a common ancestor with the apes. And people, when they heard that, said, oh, so what you're saying is that we're related to the apes. So back then, that was a big no-no because humans were superior to all, even maybe the white humans were superior to all the other organisms. And it was almost like a slight against religion. So that helped raise his prominence. So what was the basis of what he said? Well, he said within a population, he said there's natural variety. So that would mean naturally within a population you're going to have some that are going to have short necks and some will have long. And the same as before, welcome guys. The same as before, if there's a drought, and they're all out there trying to reach the leaves of a tree, and you've got a short neck, you're going to go hungry. You may not reach maturity, where the long necked ones are likely to get enough feed, reach maturity, and if they survive, they'll produce the offspring. So the long necked ones survive and pass on to offspring. Pass trait on to offspring. So I'm now just starting to introduce you to the process of natural selection. The people just came in. This has been recorded, so if you want to catch up on what you've missed, you can view the video, and the notes on the board I'll save as well. Okay, so let's just look now. The scientific community looked at what Darwin said about natural selection, and over the last 200 years they've been gathering more and more evidence, and it's pretty well the way we believe that organisms have evolved on the planet. So natural selection is a process. So what do the words mean? Natural selection. Now this discussion is probably going to be useful to you, because in your drafts that you've brought with you today for the in-class report next week, you're going to have to talk about natural selection. So I'm trying to give you some simple ideas that you can maybe put into your draft, and then next week reproduce it in the in-class report. So the natural selection, remember, it's a process. It happens in nature. I usually say to students, all right, so you've been asked to say, what does natural selection mean? Well, look at the words, the two words, natural selection. Out of natural, let's write the word nature. And out of selection, let's write selects. So it starts off a sentence for us. We're trying to have a simple idea of what is natural selection. So what does nature select? It's going to select those organisms. Which organisms will it select? Remember the drafts? We had the tall ones with the long necks, sorry, and the short necks ones. Which ones did nature select to, say, survive? Because they were, meaning that they were better adapted. So generally, nature selects those organisms which are better adapted to survive. We don't just want them to survive and produce offspring. So there's a sentence that helps you kick off any discussion about what natural selection is. I would expect in your report next week that you give me a sentence saying basically what is natural selection. If you want to use mine, you can quote what I put on the board, or you can Google it up and see what Wikipedia says, or look up a textbook. The textbooks in the library have nice chapters on natural selection, and they have glossaries at the back with simple definitions. All right. So last week we spoke about reproduction, the week before it was looking at reproduction, meiosis and meiosis, and looking at variations in populations, how variety is produced. And then last week, from that variety, we see organisms have lots of different features. Some of them are special or obvious features which help them to survive, which we call adaptations. Well, I want to show you just a segment of a DVD, which is going to just link some of these ideas for you. So I'll kick that off. And where have I got it? Maybe here. So the DVDs in the library, it's called Meiosis, the Key to Genetic Diversity. And this is part 2, so it's just the last 10 minutes that I want to show you. We might douse the lights. Is that showing up for you, Daniel?
Yeah, Dave.
Perfect.
When any organism reproduces, it makes new individuals that have the same basic characteristics as itself. Offspring share with their parents a kind of body plan that remains essentially the same generation after generation. For example, this mother and her kittens have fur, 4 legs, whiskers, and other characteristics that distinguish them as cats, not fish or birds or people. But each kitten is also different from its parents and its brothers and sisters. Most noticeably, each has different color fur, but there are many other differences as well. While it is important for all members of any species to have the same basic characteristics, genetic diversity is also important. In fact, genetic diversity helps a species survive.
To see how, let's imagine a mythical species of animals, which we'll call wimpogs. Suppose all wimpogs are genetically alike in every respect, and that they all have characteristics that help them survive in a warm environment. Up to now, wimpogs seem to do fine just the way they are. But now suppose that conditions change, grows colder. The same genetic characteristics that help this species survive in a warm environment might now threaten its survival. The species could become extinct. But with genetic diversity, the outcome might be different. Let's suppose now that some individuals of the wimpog species have characteristics that would help them if the climate gets colder. If such a change in climate occurs, these individuals will be better able to survive. If they reproduce, they also will ensure that wimpogs survive as a species.
While wimpogs are imaginary, in reality, different species benefit from genetic diversity. Genetic diversity provides options to a species that may help it survive when conditions change. Diversity helps ensure that some members of the species will be able to continue to live and reproduce. But how does genetic diversity in a species come about? There are several ways, but each involves the chromosomes that are found in every cell of any living thing. On every chromosome, there are many different genes. These genes contain the genetic information that controls how an organism looks and functions. For instance, some genes affect features like the color of a person's eyes, while others are responsible for producing vital chemicals, such as the enzyme that helps a person digest milk. One way that genetic diversity occurs is that genetic information is changed. For example, natural radiation in our environment can alter a gene on a chromosome. Such a change is called a mutation. If a mutation occurs in a sperm or egg cell, it can be passed along to offspring. When a mutation occurs in a species, it isn't necessarily good or bad. But when environmental conditions change, Some mutations become beneficial and help a species survive.
Another way that genetic diversity occurs is when two parents create offspring through sexual reproduction. To understand why sexual reproduction leads to genetic diversity, it is useful to look at how some organisms, such as bacteria, can reproduce in another way, through asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction involves only one parent. For bacteria, this parent consists of a single cell. Inside this cell is a chromosome in the form of a loop. When a bacterium reproduces asexually, this chromosome makes an exact copy of itself, and the bacterial cell divides. Each of the two daughter cells have identical chromosomes that contain the same genetic information. When bacteria divide like this to form new bacteria, there is no genetic diversity. Over and over again, each new bacterium is identical to the parent cell that produced it.
But when two parents of a species reproduce sexually, the situation is different. Great genetic diversity may result. In sexual reproduction, the chromosomes in the male sperm and female egg are not exactly the same. They contain similar but different genetic information. When the sperm and egg fuse, the fertilized egg contains a new combination of chromosomes, half from the mother and half from the father. This helps explain why this girl isn't identical to either of her parents. Her cells contain genetic information from both parents, not just one.
But why is she different from her sister? Each girl inherited half her chromosomes from the same mother and half from the same father. Yet each is different and unique. The explanation for their uniqueness lies in events that occurred before they were even conceived, when their mother's egg cells and father's sperm were formed through meiosis. Meiosis begins with a diploid germ cell that has a full set of chromosomes in pairs. To simplify things, here we show only two pairs of chromosomes. One chromosome of each pair is shown as red and the other as blue. Through meiosis, a single germ cell forms 4 sex cells that are haploid, that have only half the normal number of chromosomes. But the original chromosomes can separate or shuffle in several different ways, so long as each sex cell has a copy of one chromosome of every pair. In this way, a sex cell could have all red chromosomes, or all blue chromosomes, or a long red and a short blue, or long blue and short red. When starting with 2 pairs of chromosomes, 4 different combinations of chromosomes are possible as a result of meiosis. In human cells, starting with 23 pairs of chromosomes, the number of different combinations that occur as a result of meiosis is much greater. In fact, there are over 8 million different possible combinations of chromosomes that can occur when a human sperm or egg is formed. And when an egg and sperm join during fertilization, the number of possible different combinations of chromosomes becomes even greater, over 70 trillion. The separating and random shuffling of chromosomes during meiosis thus makes it virtually impossible that 2 siblings will inherit exactly the same combination of chromosomes from their parents.
There is another important way in which meiosis provides for genetic diversity. To see how requires once again looking at what happens to chromosomes during meiosis. On every chromosome, there are many genes. Genes that are found on the same chromosome are called linked genes. On this chromosome, 2 linked genes are shown with the letters capital A and capital V. Remember that most chromosomes have a homologous partner. On this chromosome, there would be corresponding genes that might have slightly different information. We'll call these linked genes small a and small b. We've just seen how, during meiosis, chromosomes can separate and shuffle in different ways. But because genes on a single chromosome are linked, it would appear that these genes would always stay together. In the example here, capital A would always be with capital B, and small a would always be with small b. But in fact, linked genes don't always stay linked. The process by which genes can become unlinked occurs during the prophase 1 stage of meiosis. During this stage, homologous chromosomes come together. At this point, something else can also happen. Corresponding pieces of the chromatids of each chromosome can become clipped, and the chromatids may exchange parts. This is known as crossing over. Because of crossing over, each chromatid now has a new combination of genes. In this example, it would now be possible for one chromatid to have a capital A and small b, and the other to have a small a and a capital B. Without crossing over, these combinations would have been impossible. A single chromosome may undergo more than one crossover. It is thought that at least 10 crossovers occur for every human chromosome during meiosis. Clearly, crossing over vastly increases the number of gene combinations that meiosis can produce.
The process of meiosis that we've described in this program is essentially the same in a wide variety of living things. In this program, we've seen why meiosis is important to any sexually reproducing species. Meiosis maintains a constant number of chromosomes in the cells of a species, generation after generation. At the same time, meiosis is the major source of genetic diversity. Because of meiosis and sexual reproduction, it is no wonder that we see such enormous variety in so many species, including our own.
Okay, so genetic diversity. There were several factors they talked about. What are some of the processes that cause diversity within a population while we have such a variety of characteristics? Anyone remember they'd like to suggest one? Might focus on this group now, but others have been working hard all morning. Jemima, what are you going to say? Crossing over. So yes, during the formation of the sex cells, one of the processes is the chromosome pairs line up together and then they cross over and break off bits and clip and add them to the other side. And this mixes up the gene combinations. Now, during meiosis, how many times did they say a chromosome could have bits and pieces cut off and swap over? 10 times. And we've got 46 chromosomes. So there could be 46 chromosomes crossing over up to 10 times. So it's really mixing up our genes. So the eggs or the sperm cells that result is going to they will all have different combinations. So crossing over and forming a huge range of diversity in the genes of sex cells. That's one. All right, where's the next bit of variation happen? It's also to do with meiosis and the sex cells. In that part of that video presentation, they had a sex cell with 4 chromosomes. They were blue and red ones. And what happens is they're going to line up and then divide and go in different places and pair up. Now, how they pair up is totally at random. Which one will pair with one of the others? So that's, they said, the sort and shuffle. Textbooks might call that the independent assortment of chromosomes. That helps to also increase the variety or diversity of the genes in sex cells. All right, what else might cause changes to genetic information in sex cells? Yep. Mutations. That's where some outside influence, in the video they said it could be some sort of high energy radiation, ultraviolet, cosmic rays from outer space. Anyone heard of cosmic rays? When do you have to be careful of cosmic rays? Females especially. If you are in early stage of pregnancy and you're going to go on a plane that's going to go up to maybe 10,000 meters. When you get that high, the plane is being bombarded with rays out of space. You don't have all the atmosphere to protect you, and the rays can pass through the metal. And if one of those cosmic rays hits a cell in a developing fetus, the cell may become mutated, or the gene may get mutated. And because it's a growing fetus, if you've got a cell that's damaged, then all the cells that divide off the damaged cell will all be damaged. And so the fetus may grow with a abnormality. So cosmic rays, ultraviolet rays, X-rays, people working, if there's a limit to how many X-rays you should get per year. If you're working in an X-ray environment, you should be protected and get checked regularly for how much exposure. Chemicals. Some chemicals are regarded as what's called mutagens. In other words, they've found evidence that these will cause changes to the genetic makeup of sex cells. Even some food colorings have been found to be mutagens, not just nasty chemicals, some things which are fairly common. You want to be careful. If people import foods from overseas that had food colorings, some of those food colorings are regarded as mutagens. Hopefully the Australian import people say we're not allowing that sort of food into the country. But it is used in other countries.
Isn't it like hot dogs and deli meat and things like that as well?
Yeah, that colouring, they add colouring to it. They do the same thing to prawns.
Yeah.
Now there are food colorings that are fine, but some food colorings, some of those chemicals are mutagens. Even other things like they think maybe stress or certain types of diseases, viral diseases, can also cause mutations. So we'll just go to a new page here, and I'll just so summary. This is causes, maybe. Of genetic diversity. I'm not going to explain it, but I'll list them. So the first one they mentioned was mutations. Mutations to genes. That's a chance thing. It's not a controlled thing. That's by chance. And when genes get changed, you can have genes change where they get changed in a detrimental way. Sometimes they'll change where it makes no effect, and sometimes they'll change where it could be beneficial. Mutation of genes. We've got the mixing up of genes in crossing over. Which mixes genes on chromosomes. And then we said there's also the sort and shuffle. Of chromosomes during we won't put during because all these are all during meiosis. And the last one is sexual reproduction. And what's the key to sexual reproduction? Two parents. Male and female. Two parents. So you've got genetic information from two parents being mixed. So those are some of the main processes that lead to genetic diversity. We said genetic diversity leads to variation. Variation in populations. Now, unfortunately, old Charles Darwin and Mr. Lamarck back in the 1800s, they didn't know about this stuff. So they just said something causes these variations to happen in nature. And when they do occur, then that helps the process of natural selection. All right. I just want to go back to our definition that I put up here. Nature selects those organisms which are better adapted to survive and produce offspring. Now, nature selects. When does nature do this selecting? Nature selects. We just need to add a bit. When is this going to happen? That nature will start deciding which organisms are going to survive and which will maybe die off. Something's got to happen in nature. Nature is found in the environment. So nature selects those organisms which are better adapted to survive and produce offspring. And we need to put here when a change occurs in the environment. So natural selection won't happen if everything stays the same. It's only when there's a change in the environment. Now remember, the environment includes two parts. The environment includes all the living components, all the other living things. And the other part of the environment is the physical part. The physical part could be things like the climate, the landscape, all right. What about the example in the video? In the video, e.g., the example, was windhogs.
Choice of way. I swear every time she said it in a different way.
Stop being an unbeliever.
Shun the non-believer.
So if we talk about the windhogs and what happened for them in natural selection.
They didn't have fur. So
Okay, well, let's start off with, in the second scenario, what was some common features that they had of windhogs? Most of them were without fur, but there was a few of them that had fur. So we had, some were coatless, and some had coats. And the other feature is living in a hot and dry, a hot environment. Well, that's our second point. We'll number these. That's 1, 2, the environment was a hot environment. And then we had a change to the environment. So there was a change. And it became cold. Now, we said they had some features. Which feature was the one that was going to help them to adapt? Which was their adaptation? Was going to be having coats, warm coats. Was the physical feature that provided them to be able to help adapt to the new change. And how did that help them? Warm coats to survive. By keeping warm. And they're able to reproduce. And it led to a new variety. Which was the coated windhogs. What's happened to the no coats?
Extinct.
Yep, and they became extinct. So when we're trying to talk about organisms going through natural selection, I tried to break it up into these steps. So you're looking at a population, what's the variety amongst the population? What sort of environment do they live in? Then if we talk about natural selection, there's always going to be some sort of environmental change happen. And of the features, there's got to be some feature that's going to be an adaptation that's going to help them to survive and reproduce and become the new species. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple of examples, and then You might like to, because you're going to need to do this in your report. So I'm going to ask you to think about a adaptation of your organism and maybe write out a similar sequence of ideas. Before we do that, I want to show you what do I want to show? Show this. So this is just a short YouTube. And I'll throw the lights off.
Yeah, so we in buffalo or the lion?
Human activities also directly or indirectly influence the process of evolution. Let's learn this by taking the example of Industrial Revolution in England. In the 50s in England, white-winged moths were dominant over black-winged moths. Black-winged moths were easily captured by predators like crows, but white-winged moths escaped as they had the advantage of camouflage, as their wing color matched with that of bark. The Industrial Revolution, because of smoke and soot coming from industries, the barks of the trees became darker and dull in color. So now it was easier for the birds to prey upon white moths, and the black moths had the advantage of camouflage. Thus, in the 1920s, there were more dark-winged moths compared to moths. This is the classical example of how human activities can alter the environment and affect the organisms. Use of pesticides and chemicals can also harm the organisms. Sometimes they can completely wipe out a variety of other unwanted organisms. Humans spray a lot of pesticides and insecticides to kill the mosquito larvae and spread the prevention of diseases. These insecticides can kill a variety of other organisms, including fishes, leading to their extinction.
I know. I don't get caught up in that. So it's the peppered moth example that I want to now go through, like I did with the wimpogs, and identify all the different aspects. So I'll just go to a new page and we'll do the peppered moth. And so I said, what are the, first of all, common features? Of the moths to start with. Then I said, what was their initial environment like? Then what was some of the variations? What was the change in environment? What was the adaptation? And what was the new either variety or in some instances, species? So if we can identify all these things, then what we're outlining is the natural selection of the organism. So I'll work through this with you again, and the next one you do will be your own. So some common features of these moths. So basically, these moths, they where are they living? They live in cities and the countryside. They have wings. They're coloured. They're just some general features. And they are preyed on by birds. So these moths are living in the cities, in the countryside, and there's some different coloured ones. They're able to fly around, but the birds find them and eat them. And what's the environment like that they're living in? Well, it's the unpolluted, polluted free. So it's the cityscape. It's the countryside. Now this is actually a real example. So we're talking, and it was first noticed in England back before the Industrial Revolution. What's the main feature of the, when the Industrial Revolution happened? Coal, burning of coal for power. They used to burn coal before that for just heating, but then industry, with the invention of the steam engine, to run steam engines you had to burn lots of coal, and the steam engine then gave power which would run industry. So the city had all this industry happening, so there was burning coal left, right and centre. And burning coal in just an open fire or with a like an incinerator with a chimney, you produce lots of smoke. And smoke contains gases, but also contains lots of particulate matter, like unburnt coal, powder, soot. And so over the next 30 or 40 years of the Industrial Revolution, the environment became polluted with the black soot from the burning of coal. So we'll get to, that's the change in the environment, but let's talk about variations. What was the types of variations that was going to lead to this particular natural selection? Kaya? Okay, so we had colour. Basically there was, well, they were white, which was called peppered. And there was black. So both of them existed in the population as part of the variation. Now the change in the environment was it became polluted from coal burning. So we had soot covered would be trees, buildings, so the moths now are living on not a nice clean environment, but of various colours, but a lot of things were now blackened. Adaptation. The dark coloured wings were going to be better adapted because why? Okay, so what's a good word to use to say that the black coloured wings were able to hide in the black environment? Okay, camouflage. So we had the dark coloured wings. were well camouflaged. And the result of that we had new species, these dark wings. And the extinct species peppered, light colour, were easily preyed upon and led to them becoming almost extinct. So that's like setting out a description or a scenario about how natural selection may have happened for the peppered moths. Now, I said today it'd be good to bring to class a draft of your in-class report. How are people going with that? I've spoken to some people already. Can I check in with this crew here? Your in-class report for draft for next week? Yes, no, maybes. How are we going?
I've chosen my animal. I only have what I did last week. Yes.
You had done a fair bit last week, and I last saw you. You had a fair bit written out, at least a page, yeah. So you've done more than choose your animal.
Yeah, just got it. It's mainly just the description of where it lives. I didn't really find anything that was
Like adaptations.
Yeah, no.
What's your animal?
grey-headed flying fox.
Grey-headed flying fox. So you still need to find what are some of the adaptations of grey-headed flying foxes.
I'm not going to be here next week, so
This is an assessment. It's worth 30%.
like I'm actually not going to be in the state. I'm going to be like 8 hours away.
So that, I think you told me that. So what's going to be the plan when you're going to do this?
I'm not sure because I'll be away for 3 weeks. So yeah,
What day do you leave? I think you told me this, and we said
I think I leave next week, Tuesday.
Tuesday. You want to come in here and do it on Monday?
Monday's
Geez, everything is against you getting this done.
exactly.
Do you want to do it now? What are we going to do? How's your other report going?
Not very well.
Okay. Maybe I'll have a chat to you in a lesson.
Yeah,
We'll see if we come up with a plan.
yeah. I just
Jemima?
struggle with so much work.
I really got what I did last week because I was working on my other reports.
How's it looking?
Which ones?
The other one, has it been handed in yet?
It's done. I just need to email it to you.
Oh, good.
It's complete.
Righto, so you've got to get cracking on your report. So there's not much I can help you with in terms. What's your organism?
Dingoes.
Can you identify one major feature or characteristic which you might say is an adaptation that it has, helps it to survive?
They're carnivorous.
Carnivorous, that's a bit general.
No, what about shark?
Okay, well, let's go and talk about sharks.
Okay, so well, their skin pretty much blended with the water, so
Okay,
it's harder for prey to prey on them.
yeah, or for their food to see them.
Yeah, exactly.
What preys on sharks?
Yeah, that's what,
Very brave.
so that means
Very
that
brave dominance.
maybe their food won't see them so easily, like including humans.
Yeah.
All right, so
They don't actually eat us though.
we'll stick with Abby.
No, they don't like the taste of humans. They only bite us because they think we look like seals.
Yes, okay. So
I don't have one.
what we need to look at is for sharks. And now use yours. So you're going to start on a new page and put great white shark, natural selection.
I go make a cup of tea first.
Yeah, we'll be doing this in a minute. We're going for a cup of tea first. You're going to list some common features, which might be main features about sharks. And we're going to talk about what sort of environment they live in, what varieties they have, like in terms of, are they all the same colour or is there a variety of colours? Is there some change in the environment that could happen that would help them end up having the colour that they have now? We've got to try and come up with a scenario how they ended up with this adaptation. Kaya, have you got your in-class report happening?
Yeah, it's on its way.
And what about organism? And maybe a key feature or adaptation that you've identified?
Like toxins in its claws.
Okay, yep, the fact that it's got a toxin that it uses.
Yeah.
All right, so you need to come up with a scenario about how did it end up with this particular feature? How did it get it by natural selection? All right, so we'll have a break here for 10 minutes. And when we come back, that's the first part of our second part of today, is to help you be able to talk about natural selection in your organism. If you can get something like what I've done here for the peppered moths, if you can get something like that written down for your organism, then you'll be able to put that into your report and it will help address a couple of the criteria. Any questions there? Daniel, all good?
Yeah, all good.
All right.
Logbook. I have it here.
Thank you, Abby. All right. Thank you.
I have my logbook too. I'll just go.
Yes,
I'll go
please.
email the
Yeah, pass me your logbooks. Can you also, Abby?
Yeah.
Have you got the student declaration that you need to sign and give to me to say it's all your fantastic own work? And anybody else that's got, I need that from you as well, Jemima.
Is it this thing?
It's
Yeah.
thing on the back of our.
Sign all the pages, put your names on them. Have you got your copy there as well, Annika? Because if that document that I gave out, the one that's signing, you may as well sign it and give it to me, because if you email me stuff, at least then I don't have to chase you for that.
Is it this?
Yeah. You keep the criteria sheet.
Yeah. Just rip.
She can't.
Yeah.
It's on the other side.
Show me which one.
See this one? The criteria.
I don't need my criteria. Oh,
Yeah, I don't know criteria either. But I kind of played with it.
like the criteria.
Yeah, I marked stuff on it just so I knew where I was up to.
All right.
Or write little notes next to it.
Yeah. I'd take a photo of it, but my camera's my name on it. So.
Just fill it out and sign it
Yeah.
now. Right, and you're signing this part,
Just
and
that
then
bit.
make sure you hand that to me.
And the
Thank you.
just one page. Oh, you'll need that one for
Yes, please.
I forgot to grab my chemistry logbook, but I did email you my.
I think my birthday is
Biology.
2017. I'll be about
Biology.
yesterday. Oh god,
Okay,
right in
and-
September.
I
Well, if you've got your chemistry log,
don't have my, all the information in my logbook is in my report. So
Don't forget to sign.
Well,
up
I
to
tell you
the
what.
They'll find you.
you send me a photo of your front page of your logbook. I need to have some copy of it, because if I have to send it to another person to mark, they'll say, "Oh, was thank you."
I
Higher
was
biology.
typing up what I thought was my report, but I realised I was just typing up my logbook instead.
That's all right. Yeah. Well, that's what a good way to start to get the
Yeah.
report going.
Because that all I've got is just what we did in class.
We'll get that typed up.
But yeah, I've got all that here typed up, but I just realised I didn't identify the second signature. Or put that bit there. I kind of left that blank and I didn't realise I didn't.
So yeah, that's like a draft you've got there.
Yeah.
Well, look, Do you want to keep working on that and send it to me on Monday?
Yeah, I can.
Or do you want to give it to me
hopefully.
now?
Well, it's not actually the report at all.
Well, it's
It's exactly what I wrote in my book.
but your
just
logbook
like,
is pretty close to your report.
All right. Well,
Give me a look here.
because it's just those few pages. What?
Do you want me to take a copy of this
Yeah.
and a copy of this?
Yeah.
And where's your handwritten stuff for?
I will feel the same.
I take copies.
Yeah.
That means I've got the basic copy, and then you can keep this and
Yeah.
try and finish it off.
Yeah.
And then email it to me.
All right.
Then I can mark all of it and see, at least you've got it submitted. At least if I've got this, I'll go and do this
All
copy
right. Well,
now.
with the identify the cellular structure.
Yeah.
What exactly am I supposed to do? Do I just
Are
put
you?
a picture and
Yes.
what
Yep.
this
Research.
is,
Here you
or-
go. And I write on here.
Yeah.
Okay. So we want a label diagram.
Yeah.
And what it does.
Okay, because I was like confused on
Yeah.
if I was supposed to do it like
Yeah.
how it
What does it do?
refers to the.
Yeah. That's there, and it actually, you will be asked about it in the criteria.
Test two.
In criteria,
Oh,
yeah, have to talk about it more, but
Okay.
wait till we get to that. I'll go
Yeah.
and copy these
All
for you. Thanks. Good. Well, I'm glad you showed me that. I wasn't sure. Now you've got something to submit. In 10 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes, that's one more time we're done. Fucking ran straight into the door.
So is your report pretty well there? Or
Yeah.
you still got a bit of work to do?
So I don't know if I just got a bit confused between 2.3 and 2.4.
Better bring up the criteria.
Yeah. Because I don't know if I've sort of put them together.
Oh, you can possibly do that too.
Yeah. So I've described one of each adaptation in detail. And then what is 2.4? It says to explain for at least 2 of these adaptations how it helps the organism survive in its environment. So I could.
So it's 2.5 I'm going to be doing in class.
Yeah.
Now you said 2.
I've done 2.3.
Yeah.
Just got to do 2.4.
So for at least 2 of the adaptations, how it helps. So 2 of the ones you've described in 2.3, explain how you think it helps the organism to survive.
Can I just sort of add that onto the end of 2.3?
Look, you may blend them together to make it sounds good. Yeah. 2.3 and 2.4, you might have them all blended together.
Yeah, cool.
I'll give them a couple of minutes. Now, other than after you've done 2.5, the only thing that you're probably going to do is the reference list and then 3.5. People forget 3.5.
Yeah.
I'll mention that when the others come back as well. We'll work on that. Okay. Well, it seems to me you won't have much to do on yours. Are you there, Daniel? I've got an activity that's using a model for natural selection. And you could do it on your own, but I'm hoping that Daniel's up to the same spot to you, that you might do it with him. I don't think the others are ready to, they've got too much of that stuff to catch up on. So I'll give it to you as an option. All right, so you there, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Can I just talk to you about your draft report?
Yep.
Now, I've got a list of the criteria showing up on the screen at the moment.
Yep.
About where are you up to with your report, your draft?
I've got to do I think 2.4.
Yep. Okay.
And
2.5.
2.4. Yeah, I've got to do that. And then criteria 3, which most of it is done. So it's just really the in-text referencing and reference lists.
Don't worry about in-text referencing so much.
Don't?
No, because
okay.
Just have a reference list because your draft is not worth anything to your marks.
Yeah, that's, yep.
So you're just going to, once you get your draft and you're happy with it, then you'll be reducing it down to 100 words. And when you rewrite in class, you won't be doing in-text referencing. You'll just add your reference list at the end. So can I just check? You're still working on 2.4 and you wouldn't have done 2.5 either?
No.
Okay. So you've done 2.3 where it says, describe in detail one example of each type of adaptation identified in 2.2.
Yep.
All right, so now in 2.4, you have to choose 2 of those and explain how you think it helps the organism to survive in its environment. So what's one of the adaptations that you've spoken about in 2.2 or 2.3, sorry?
Sorry, let me just get back to my book.
Yeah.
Well, this what I've put down is there structural adaptations. That the termite always has to stay moist, so they're always there. They adapted to their mound, to their environment that they're in, their housing, because they always got to be moist. They can't go out in the sun. So,
all right, okay. So the feature is, the requirement is they have to remain moist, and to remain moist, they live inside their dirt mounds. They don't come outside their mounds. Is that correct?
yes, unless it's been damaged and they've got to
repair
it.
So is that are we talking about them, they've got to remain moist, or are we talking about them living inside a dirt mound?
So the termites that are the ones I'm doing, the ones that live in Northern Territory, they've got to remain moist. And it's such a hot climate up there compared to the ones that are around here. You can see them walking around on logs down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, up there, they've got to remain moist, stay out of the dryer, so they continuously survive within their mound.
So we've got 2 things here. They've got to remain moist, and the other feature is they've got to live inside a dirt mound all the time. Why do they have to remain moist?
They've got soft skin. They haven't adapted to harsh
they don't have
heat,
a hard
sunlight
skeleton. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there some other reason they have to remain moist? Does that help them to breathe, or does it help them to get food or communicate? I'm just trying to get to the bottom of this is a feature, their bodies remaining moist. I'm just wondering whether you found out what's the value of their bodies having to remain moist. Does it stop them from drying out? Does it help them breathe? You may not know. You still tuned in to me, Daniel? Hello? Right, you still there, Daniel? We've just lost your audio, Daniel, so I can see my microphone's working. But yeah, you might be coming back now, eh?
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can now, yeah.
Yeah, I accidentally knocked the my headset out of the computer. I didn't even realise.
Okay, so I was trying to get to the bottom of what's the value of these termites, why they have to keep their skin moist. What does that help them do? have you read anything about this particular feature?
I haven't gotten down to this feature yet.
All right. All right, maybe we choose another feature then. So you said they've got to remain inside the mound. Yep. They don't want to be out in the exposed environment. So what type of adaptation is that? Is that a behavioural, structural, or physiological?
Structural? No.
We're talking about them staying inside the mound. The fact that they remain inside the mound, that's more of a behavioural.
Oh, behavioural, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, how does staying inside the mound, this is 2.4 now, how does staying inside the mound help them to survive?
Oh, they work in there, they can, they won't be exposed to heat and or sunlight or any predators.
That would, well, let's just focus on the heat and sunlight. What would the heat and sunlight do to them?
Quickly dry them out.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to talk about the adaptation of living in a protected dirt mound. That's a behavioural adaptation. And how does it help them to survive? It protects them from being exposed to a high temperature environment. That stops them from drying out. Now, that's 2.4. That's all you need to say for that particular thing, 2.4. What we want to do now is we can come up with a process. This is 2.5. That outlines how did these termites, because not all termites make dirt mounds like these ones out there, how did they get to have this adaptation of building a dirt mound? All right, that's where you're up to.
Yeah.
So, going to, I'm waiting for the others to come back, but I've finished waiting now. So, when it comes to, let's copy this criteria and put it onto my whiteboard. It's got a lot of noise coming through at the moment. All right, so this is criteria 2.5. Now, Billy, did you have an adaptation that you think you might choose to help outline how a natural selection has got to that point? What's your organism again? Bilbies?
Yeah.
And have you got a special feature that you can see is a really good adaptation?
No. That they live in burrows?
Live in burrows, okay. So the purple on the same line where they live.
Yeah. Or they don't need to drink water.
Okay.
So,
what we're looking at, going through the process, the idea of natural selection for your organism. Daniel, a lot of activity coming through your mic. If you don't mind just turning it off. Okay, so for your organism, we want to identify an adaptation. Choose and adaptation that you've discussed. All right. Okay. I might help Daniel use his, and then you can adapt it to yours.
Yes.
So Daniel, I'm going to choose your example, e.g., and you were talking about the termites, desert termite live in enclosed raised dirt mounds. And we said this is an example of a behavioural adaptation. So we want to come up with a scenario that says how do they end up with this ability to build dirt mounds? And do a scenario. So this is a scenario starting off before they had this adaptation. And we'll go through these same features that we had before. So common features. What are some common features of termites? Please, Daniel.
These termites are between 3 and 5 millimeters in length.
Small. Yep. Do they live on their own or in colonies?
Yeah, they live in colonies and they're social.
Large social colonies. Do they what do they feed on?
They feed,
On sort of vegetable matter, like wood and leaves and branches.
they feed on
Usually vegetable matter, like a lot of termites over here feed on the wood of your house.
yeah, they feed on grass.
Okay, so I'll put here and colonies. And feed on vegetation. That includes grasses, trees, bushes.
And fungi inside the nest as well, when they clean it.
Are they feed on stuff inside the nest, or do they bring this material in?
Fungi grows within the nest because it's humid, and then they clean it.
And fungi. Okay. All right. We don't want to put too much here. Now, before they were building mounds, where do they normally like to live? These colonies. The desert ones you talk about live in mounds, but do all termites live in mounds?
No, some live in hollow trees, some live in logs.
Generally, nests in ground, logs, sometimes trees. Okay, so we're talking about before these desert termites built their mounds. Let's do now the initial environment. What would have the environment been like before they started to live in the desert mounds? If they're living in the ground or logs or trees, what can you suggest the environment may have been like?
Rainforest, damp, not so dry. Subtropical.
Okay. You might say temperate, subtropical, environment, which a lot of Australia was covered with. Okay. Now, the next thing we have is what sort of variations were displayed amongst termites. Well, we had one of the variations we've listed is already they have the ability to build their nests in different places. Build nests in various places. We've already mentioned in the ground, in logs, in trees. So let's now make a change in the environment. Now remember, what we're trying to do is describe a scenario that would suggest how did these termites get to be able to live out there. So what would the change in the environment need to be?
Dry climate, so drought.
Okay, so drought and hotter. Yeah. These were living became drier and hotter. That's the environment change. So what's the adaptation? So what were this particular group of termites? Some of them must have been able to do what?
Well, they've contained themselves to a self-sufficient enclosed environment.
Build raised nests out of mud or dirt. Raised nests out of dirt, mud. Do they also secrete their own, help make all the mud stick? Is that, you read something like that?
Yeah, they do.
All right, so these raised nests, they're a mound, aren't they? Yeah.
Yep.
And that's the adaptation. And so now we have out there a new species. So these mound building termites can now survive. And they populate the area. And ones that can't build these mounds would have, in that particular area, either died out or moved away to where it's cooler and more moisture. All right. So I did say to you I would help you work through this today in class. So you've got, that's 2.5 done. Now, as I went through that, Billy, were you able to, did you copy that or would you do your own?
I'm sort of doing my own.
Now, is there any steps in here? I'm not sure what to write.
Can I tell you what I've got so far?
Yeah, go on.
Can you just tell me?
Yeah.
So for common features, I've got or in pairs,
yeah,
and then nocturnal.
Yeah.
Initial environment, I had that they used to have a large distribution in central and western areas.
Yes.
Still sandy grasslands with only a few select predators.
Yeah.
And then variations, I suppose would be bilbies that only burrowed shallow and then bilbies that burrowed deep.
Or maybe, and some bilbies that don't live in burrows might just live in, well, could be hollow logs.
Yeah.
Could be under the mulch.
Yeah.
Could be, yeah.
And then I'll just
So you're talking again, building nests or whatever at various different sites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then change in environment. From research, it says that like the introduction of like feral cats has been a big contributor to why their population has declined so much. And so then the area that like even the cats can survive, like that's why the bilbies are so restricted to places without water, like the desert. So in change of environment, could I put that it's a hotter environment, but also because of
Was the living underground to get away from the heat or to get away from predators or both?
Yeah.
Okay, so you might say changing environment is a hotter environment with possibly new predators.
Yeah.
Yep, good. Okay, so that's your change in the environment. And the adaptation that some of them showed?
That they burrow deeper.
Yeah, burrow deep into ground.
Yeah.
Which then allowed them to escape predators and have a cooler environment.
Yeah.
And then from that you get these new species. So is there different species of bilbies, and do some live above ground or they all live underground in deep burrows?
They all live underground in deep burrows, but there was a smaller bilby that died out.
Okay.
That they think is extinct.
Yeah, all right. So you've got now that, like with the termite example, we've got all over termites that are living in different habitats.
Yeah.
But the bilbies, if they haven't been able to dig deep in the ground to either escape the hot climate or predators, then they've become, those other varieties have died out.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we're looking at on your criteria sheet for the in-class report, criteria 2.5. I don't know if you guys are up to that criteria yet, but that's just what I've done with people in the class. If you've covered criteria 2.1, 2, 3, 4, criteria 2.5, then you might want to ask me for some help. If you're not up to there, maybe you want to ask me for some help on any of the previous criteria. Have a look at where you're up to. I'll just go back to Daniel. So it seems like now, Daniel, you should be pretty well fine for all of criteria 2.
Yeah, well, we covered a fair bit of it.
Did you have any more questions to me about what I did on the board about your termite scenario?
No. That's pretty, that helped me pretty good.
Yeah, well, you now need to just summarize that down into your own words. Remember, you need to reproduce that in your report next week. So get it in some way. It's going to be easy for you to remember so that you can rewrite it when you do the in-class report. Okay. Now, checking with the other crew. If any of you have got a criteria in the list that you'd like to ask about, I'm not sure what to do or what to say.
Well, the only thing I really stuck on was the organisms' habitats. Like there wasn't exactly like sharks live in the ocean. There's
Yeah.
exactly one spot that they live in.
Yeah,
So-
well, so they're found along coastlines, but
Yeah.
they're also
East
found
coast.
out in the open water. So, and what about down? They find them down in the colder Arctic or in the Antarctic? Not so much. So it's more the warmer
Yeah.
ocean waters, open water, and along coastline. So it's pretty broad. That's your habitat.
Yeah. There you go.
Is that going to help you? All right. Anyone else got a question about any of the criteria that they're up to and they're not sure what to write or how to phrase it?
I need to have a computer.
You haven't.
Oh, I need to have a computer. Just
All right. Well, which computer have you been using up to now? The TAFE one?
yeah.
All right.
I'm using my own library. It's full of people. So
Is it?
yeah, there is a class in there on Thursdays. You know, it took me half an hour to print one piece of paper yesterday because there were so many people printing.
Is that for a TPC subject?
Yeah.
Not a science one?
What's this?
Was
To
it
print
for-
one piece of paper.
Was
Oh,
it for
no.
science or some other subject?
For English.
Oh, okay.
And then just the amount of people printing stuff.
Did you just mention it to the librarian?
Yeah.
Good.
Just said, oh,
Well,
just
look,
have to pay. Yeah, they said there's another printer upstairs. I went up there. It was in use too. And everyone was printing like 8 copies of something, like
Yeah.
8 copies of a book, like all teachers printing
oh, okay.
stuff for classes.
When you
So-
print, can you have it on your computer and press print and it goes automatically through? Or is that,
It goes to the queue.
and then you got to go with your card,
Yeah.
swipe your card?
Yeah.
Are there certain printers that only students can use?
Oh no, you can use all of them. I think yeah, you can use them all. Yeah, like the big printer in the library, the little one you can use both of those. Yeah.
And which is the one upstairs you're talking about?
Yeah, there's one. So you know, where our English classroom is at the end of B block. If you go up that staircase, there's
Yeah.
another printer right in the corner there.
And that
Just
one
so
will
you
work
know.
for you?
Yeah, that one will work as well.
Okay.
Same thing, just using that. Yeah.
Yep. Well, if you get stuck again, if you want to walk down to D block, if I'm here, I can help you do that. So I know it's painful.
Yeah.
What were we talking about? You said before you were telling me about printing. Library. So you can't access a computer in the library at the moment.
Well, you can, but it's just you're surrounded by other people as well because they are all doing a class.
You're surrounded in here.
No, but we're all doing the same subject. You've got people talking around you about their subject, so it's quite difficult to try and concentrate.
Earphones on. Borrow those little mufflings.
Then-
No, I'm going to let that stop you.
They're clips.
You need to, because I'm thinking of options. I'm
Yeah.
trying to gauge where you guys are up to. Does anybody up to criteria 2.5 and want me to help them do criteria 2.5?
Dave, I have a question about 2.5.
Yep.
Do you want us to put in the nature selects those organisms like that sort of?
Yeah, I would like
Natural
you to
selection.
say what natural selection is, and then say, here's a scenario for how it might happen for this adaptation in this organism.
How is
You
it-
don't have to do as much information. You can. I've broken it up into steps. If you can put it in a couple of sentences, it's only worth 1 or 2 marks. So I'm not after volumes. I'd just like you to say, well, this is how it could have arisen, this adaptation. Anybody
Are we
else?
supposed to remember the criteria when we're doing our report?
You don't?
Get a copy.
We have a criteria, we're allowed to.
You have a copy in front of you
Oh,
while you're
that's-
writing.
That's a good lesson.
And
Well,
can
how
I
long it
suggest
was.
that you use the criteria as your headings? You don't have to, when you do your 100-word summary, don't write down any headings. You can just write 1.1. This is what I want to remember. Any key words. 1.2, key words. 1.3, and those 1.1 they are the headings, and your heading can be 1.1 names, scientific, and then maybe you'll have that written on your help sheet. Will you need to write the common name on your help sheet? No. But great white shark. Then 1.2 is, what does it say? Classification. Well, you may need a couple of key words there.
Do we have to write in the Greek words as well?
Yeah, any words that's where those Greek words or the Latin, they will be, you may have them written on your help sheet.
With the classification, do we have to write like all of them or just?
Yeah. But hopefully, if you remember kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, you might remember that, and then just write down the actual groups.
Yeah.
Or if you want to be sneaky, you could put K.
K, P, C, O, G.
And when I look at that, I won't know, I don't recognise K as a word. So I won't ask you to count it.
Okay.
But you might say, oh, that reminds me, that's kingdom.
Yeah.
If you wrote kingdom, I'd tell you to have to count it. If you wrote K, I'd say, oh, well, don't count that.
And numbers don't count.
Numbers don't count. I'll only be looking for words. Don't try and convert all your report, your summary into code.
Just write numbers.
I did like all these weird little code things.
All right. So back to, does anybody want to ask questions? This is the part of the lesson where I'm not going to be asking you to give me a draft. I said, bring a draft to class today, and here's your chance to ask questions about it. So the information you're collecting is pretty straightforward, but if you're having trouble finding stuff or you're not sure what to write, this is where you get your feedback on your draft.
Hey, Dave.
Yes, Daniel.
Can I just cut out a photo of the termite and stick it on my report? Like I have before in, like you said, we have before in reports like this.
Doesn't have to draw.
Yeah. No, I said last week, here's what you can do. Just tune in. You can find a labeled diagram of your organism in a source and copy and paste it to a page, and then it can be on your 100-word summary page. And what you can do, you got to count the words on it. When it comes to it, you just cut it out and just glue it onto your written page.
So it wasn't that a part of the word count?
It is, yes.
Oh my gosh. Just remember it word doesn't. Yeah.
All right, so yep, any diagrams that you want. If it's a map, you want to sketch a map, or if you've got a copy of a map, you can have that on your help sheet. But if it's got words, they count, but you can cut it out and put it onto your report.
So do we need a map for 1.5, which is identify regions?
Yes, well, you don't have to have a map. You can discuss the regions, or a map that's shaded in here in Australia. This is where it's found. That can sort that out pretty quick. Yeah. Now, what else can you bring in with your 100-word summary? And I will provide you with the dot point criteria.
Yep.
You'll have your 100-word summary with any diagrams on it. What else will you need to bring in prepared? A pre-prepared reference list. So any written out properly as a reference list or bibliography, doesn't have to be annotated or evaluated, just list them down. This is the sources that I've used, and you can have that all typed up. It's not part of your 100 words. You just attach it to the back of your report once you've written it out. Okay. Now, let's look at this criteria, because I want you to get this mark, and I want it to be in your reports, in your drafts. We're going to do this now. Put in your draft, I'll copy. this to so this is criteria 3.5, and students always forget to do it. It's got to show up on your in-class report, and it's worth 1 mark. So it says provide one specific example of how your biology ideas relating to this report have changed. So it can't be something general. You need to pick something out of what you've learnt and then just tell us in 1 or 2 sentences. Can you think of this now and write it out now? So it's going to be part of your report when you write it next week. It's no good putting it in your draft and not showing up in the report because you won't get any marks for it. Okay, that's why it's good we're talking about it now. All right, so I'll extract it out of you. So you're doing great white sharks, and you know a bit about great white sharks already.
Yep.
And you're looking at we're focusing on adaptations. Now, is there any sort of interesting adaptations you've learned about great white sharks that you didn't know about before?
Not yet.
Okay, is there anything that you've read or learned about great white sharks that you, from your research, you didn't know before? Have you got your notes there in front of you, what you've written?
I do.
What's something interesting that you thought, oh, I didn't know that before, but that's interesting?
Females are usually larger than the males.
Okay.
Very larger. Yeah. That's one thing.
Have you read why that might be the case?
No, it just said that like the largest female can grow up to over 6 meters in length and plus 1,000 kilos in weight.
And how do the males compare?
Well, they didn't have much about the big males, but the smaller males grow to about 3 to 4 meters, and only about doesn't have weight.
Yeah.
Yeah, only from 3 to 4 meters.
All right. So here is an example of something that's it's a related biology idea. The females sharks are bigger. Now, why is that interesting?
Because usually in all other these animal species,
The males
the
are bigger.
males are generally bigger.
Yeah. All right. So that's the idea.
Yeah.
You just need to say, and it's specific because you're just talking about this is these sharks. The females are bigger than the males generally, and you're saying I find that interesting because generally, in lots of other animals, it's the males that are bigger. Maybe because they need to be the fighter, the leader, the defender.
Yeah.
All right. You just need to, can you write that down in a couple of sentences?
Yeah.
Anybody else need help with coming up with a reflection on 3.5? Because I want you to do this now. If you do it now, hopefully it'll show up in your report.
I haven't really researched enough to be able to do it now.
All right. Yeah, but you've got a few things listed there.
I do.
Well, what's the organism again?
Flying fox.
Flying fox. So you've written that down about some of their features?
Yeah.
What's some interesting feature you've written down there that you may not have known about them?
One thing that stands out is that they don't echolocate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So, and I just read that then and highlighted it.
well, that's
They
interesting.
have really large eyes, so
That's nice. This
didn't
is
pay much
exactly.
attention when I wrote it down, but I was
Yeah.
just reading through it then. Yeah.
So, because generally, what do you think about when flying foxes and bats that how do they find their way around?
Sound waves.
Yeah, echolocate, but this species doesn't. And so, and you just said they must have to then find their way around
Yeah.
by.
And that's what they have really large eyes.
Yeah, there you go. Can you make a couple of sentences just
Yeah.
about what you just said to me?
Yeah.
And Jemima,
I haven't gotten that far.
what's your organism?
Dingoes.
Dingoes. Have you written down anything about them? Is there anything
Just-
new or interesting that you've read about dingoes that you didn't know about before?
Not really. It says like that the dingoes are the largest terrestrial predator in Australia. I didn't really know that, but that's interesting.
What is territorial in Australia?
Let's say animal. Largest territorial what, sorry? Predator. Yeah, I wonder what your source was. I can think of a bigger predator than a dingo.
The shark. Shark is the bigger predator.
No, but just read that sentence again. The largest territorial.
No, terrestrial.
A terrestrial, living on land. Oh, okay. I was thinking of crocodiles, which sort of spend part of their time in water and on
I see
land.
the crocodile and a shark fight.
That would be amazing.
The crocodile probably wins.
Yeah.
It's got hands, but you know,
It's got hands.
It's got hands.
But they can't swim as fast.
Yeah, no, but
They can swim pretty fast.
Yeah, they can swim pretty fast.
But they can't zigzag, can they? Where sharks can just go back and forth and back and forth. You know, they can probably zigzag in the water.
Sharks are pretty limited with the direction they can zigzag.
So who's going to put this in their
A
reflection?
crocodile can swim backwards and a shark can't. So, as long if the crocodile gets a hold of the shark, it can dig its claws into the shark and actually maul him. So I believe that the crocodile will win.
True, but he gets a hold of it.
You can write.
This is just saying that they're the same size and weight.
Yeah, like
So a crocodile would definitely win. If you have a
So,
5 meter shark,
Abby, if you run out of things to write about in your report, you can add to your reflection. You can say, now I'd also just like to raise this other idea I had about how would a saltwater crocodile and a great white shark of equal size, how would they go off against each other? And then you can do your surmising.
the answer is.
All right, but only when you run out of other words. Make sure all else
So
is
is
trying
that
to
how
address.
I reach my word count?
No, it's not, there's no word count. It's just address all the criteria. Kaya, you haven't had any comment yet, so how are you going with yours?
I'm doing fine.
All right.
I'm just
And did you come up with a 3.5 type comment? Yeah,
3.5, the last one.
one we've just been talking about. The one that students always forget not to do and miss out on a mark.
This team.
Do you need help?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
have you listened to all the examples we just discussed, or you've been too busy researching? All right. So, what's your organism?
Platypus.
All right. Is there something about which you've read or written about which you didn't know about platypuses before, or platypi before, that you find interesting?
They were whatever in the early 20th century,
Yeah.
but they're now.
Did that affect their populations? But now you're saying that their populations are okay, or
Yeah, they're still now.
right?
So they're
So
protected.
this is a conservation comment or idea. So all you need to say is that, oh, I didn't realise in the early days they were hunted for their pelts, and the population of them was diminished. But since it's banned, the populations have returned. That's all you need to write in a couple of sentences. You've got a specific example of how your ideas relating to the report have changed. So the fact that you didn't know about it, now you understand that that happened. I didn't know about it either. Need to make it into words in a couple of sentences. It's now, Jemima, have you thought of anything about dingoes that you didn't know about before? You're still #1 expert on everything about dingoes.
I had done enough research to find anything else out.
Right.
I don't even know anything about dingoes, really.
Okay, well, we might have to pack you off.
The closest to a dog. So I was like,
I know lots about sharks, so that's why I was like, sharks.
I might just, Daniel, I didn't check back with you about criteria 3.5. You had a chance to look at it and think about what you will write.
I'm thinking about it right now, actually.
So you're after some interesting bit of information about termites that you didn't know about before. So whether it's something about their feature or behaviour, something they do to help them to survive.
But why do that?
How much do that crocodile?
Probably
I've
something about them.
well, these termites their mounds face north south.
Oh, what was that? Sorry, they.
These termites, magnetic termites, their mounds face north south direction.
Okay, I probably missed that before when you said it. So these are called magnet or magnetic termites. Is that right?
Yeah, magnetic, meaning because of the their mound.
Their mounds are built in a direction that it goes along north and south.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a good example. It's a specific example, and it's about them building these mounds aligned with north and south. And did you find out why they do that?
I did somewhere, but I didn't write it down, and now I'm trying to find it again because I want to put that on my report.
Yeah, well, this is what an example of a behavioural adaptation. They've built the mounds in this alignment for a special reason. Now, remember, they're living out where it's really hot and dry. What advantage will it be for them to have their mounds lined up with north and south? So, anyone in the classroom like to put in 2 bobs worth about why these termites build their dirt mounds, big, narrow, long dirt mounds, which are lined up north and south? They're living out in the desert where it's really hot and dry.
And you said that the southerly winds can go through it.
Well, you're talking about winds. It could be something to do with winds, which is part of the climate, but there's something else that's probably more obvious than the wind. What else is that mound going to be exposed to?
Magnetic termites.
Magnetic termites means that they're able to work out which way is north and south and build their mounds aligned north and south.
I don't know. Poles, I don't know.
Okay, anybody else? All right, how about which direction does the sun rise in the morning? Rises in the east. Which direction does it set? West. And where's the sun at midday?
In the sky.
Right above us. Well, if you're in the southern hemisphere, it's not directly above, it's above and to the north.
Okay.
So it moves as an arc. So when is the mound going to feel, is it going to get the hottest?
In the day.
So they build the mound so that the side of the mound that's going to get the hot sun is just the thin side at the front because it's facing north. The rest, the long sides are going to be not in the full sun. So it's going to help keep it cooler.
That's very interesting. I have a question.
I'll check. So did you pick up on that, Daniel?
Yeah. I'm looking at a fact sheet off them, and it's to help them protect from extreme temperatures induced by strong tropical sun. Yeah, so during the middle of the day, that sun is only going to strike the north side, which is going to be quite thin. If it was striking the big broad side, the whole of the termite nest would get hot, but because it's only one short, thin side, that means most of the termite mound will remain cooler. So that's a good example. If you can put that into a couple of sentences for criteria 3.5, and don't forget to write about it in your report. Back to Kaya.
I think last week you told us some definitions that we definitely need to have.
Yes.
For the day.
Okay, definitions. So I'll put up the criteria again and I'll underline them. I think there's now 4. All right, so you may have more than these, but down to here. Provide definitions of relevant terms used in the report. Well, I'd like you to tell me, first of all, adaptation. What is an adaptation? As well as, what's the difference between structural, physiological, and behavioural adaptations? And the other thing that we did earlier today is I put on the board a definition of natural selection. So they are some key words. I think that's sufficient for you to include. Now those definitions, they can be ones I've used on the board or in notes or off Wikipedia or out of a textbook.
And if like there's a new term in our course,
Yes, if there's something, yeah, that would be nice, because there is a criteria down the bottom here.
Yeah.
That says use scientific terms. So it means if you've got some scientific word, you can give it its meaning, give us its meaning.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, good. Anybody else got questions about any of the criteria? Now, it seems to me there's a number of us that have a fair bit to do on their reports. Yeah.
Which report?
Yeah, which report? I've got another activity, but if you have got a lot of work to do on your report, I'd rather you went and did that. You look like you've got a lot of bingo work to do. Yes?
Bingo does.
Now, if you haven't got access to a computer, you might need to go to the library, or you might be able to use this computer here if you want me to help you find information that you're having trouble getting.
I just need to find adaptations.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you listed down like obvious features?
Yes. I have.
All right. Obvious features of great white sharks. Start off. Well, give me some of them.
Okay, well, they have pale skin as to help them camouflage in the ocean too.
Okay. So the colour of the skin, is that a structural, physiological, or behavioural thing? It's a structural thing, and you're identifying it that it helps it to be camouflaged. So it's a structural adaptation.
Okay.
So you might present this as a table. So you'll have structural adaptation, number one, colour of skin.
Okay.
How does it help it survive? By helping it to be difficult to be seen by its prey.
Yeah.
What's another example of a thing you've got written down about them?
They're a large amount of teeth.
Okay, their teeth. They have many teeth, large and very sharp teeth. So you might say that the feature is many large and sharp rows of teeth. Structural, physiological, or behavioural? So a structural feature, and how does that help it to survive? It helps it to survive by being able to capture and quickly consume its prey. Yep.
All the ones I have written down are structural.
Oh, okay. What did you look up? Anything to do with it's got what sort of behaviours does it have? Any behaviours?
I kind of want to say that sharks really aren't aggressive, but they are when it comes to feeding. So like, they're usually pretty quick when it comes to feeding. Like they'll grab their prey.
Right.
They
Okay.
don't eat unless they need to.
Yeah, they won't eat unless they need to. So if they find that they've bitten into a human, they'll know because of the iron in the blood, and
Yeah.
they don't exactly like too much iron in the blood.
Okay, so they can be selective in what they eat.
Yep.
That's a behavioural thing. And when they do find food they're aggressive.
Yeah.
That's a behavioural thing. So don't write those two things down. That they are selective about what they eat, and when they are hungry and they find their food, they're aggressive. Now, both of those are behavioural things. You can say they are behavioural adaptations because it's both of them will help them to survive. Means they're going to eat things which they can digest. Means they're going to be able to, when they find the food, they're going to be able to get as much as they can, because there's usually competition.
Yeah.
Well, that's given you a couple. It'd be nice when you're doing some research to. Did you mention something else about reproduction of sharks?
No, Kai mentioned that last week, saying
All right.
that they actually have an egg, like they
Yeah.
have an egg inside
I
themselves.
thought someone. So that is a physiological adaptation. So you can talk about that.
I have a question.
Yes.
The fact that they have like rows of teeth.
Yes.
Would that be physiological?
Yes, that's. I was thinking, do these great white sharks have new teeth coming through?
Well, they have a front row of
Yeah.
of larger teeth, and the ones that go back further into the mouth are smaller teeth.
Which, as the big ones break off, do they replace them?
I'm not too sure. I'm pretty sure they do.
I think, well, if they do, that's a physiological thing.
Yeah.
You will find sometimes things you're thinking, oh, is it structural or physiological? You can say both. You say, look, I think it's a bit of structural and physiological. They've got teeth, which is structural, but the fact that the teeth are constantly growing forward to replace broken ones, that's a functional thing.
Yeah.
So, well, look, you've already just listed off 4 or 5, so you're well on the way. Did anybody else need any help like that? Okay, well, we've got 15 minutes. You can either stay here and get Dave to help you find and talk about information, or you can slip over to the library and maybe find a computer to catch up on some more details of your organism. I'm not going to worry about the other practical activity because 15 minutes is not sufficient.
Oh, Dave.
Yes.
My organism.
Yep.
In its class, they're mammalia, but then they have an infraclass for being a marsupial. Should
Yeah.
they include that?
I would say mammalia - marsupial,
Okay.
Yeah. meaning that they're egg laying.
I'm gonna go to the library.
All right, good. Yep. Now, so you want to finish your biology this semester?
Yeah.
Okay. So this assessment's got to be done sometime before semester 2.
Yeah.
I've got to get the results in before the end of June.
Okay.
You're going to be away for what weeks? Next week?
Next week. I'm not exactly sure. Including next week, probably like a month.
So really, realistically, because you've got your, well, you've given me copies of your draft and your logbook. And if you do more on it, you send it to me, I can mark that. So you're going to get some marks for that.
Okay.
We've got 4 quizzes in biology. How many have you done?
I'm not sure.
Let me have a look. We've got 1 more to do.
Done like 2. I am. Well, I'm doing this course over 2 years.
Okay.
So
Excuse me a moment. I'll just check your old assessment. Hey, Gary. No, it's fine. I'll come back to you in a
That's
minute.
all right.
Rebecca. Don't go yet.
I won't.
All right. Yeah,
They just gone, is he?
Yeah.
It's just on the phone.
Need some spring rolls. I'm so hungry.
Good.
I'm right Messaged me after about 3 years saying, ooh, I love that. It's been like literally 3 years.
Who wants to run a whiteboard with me?
How? Is it perfect?
sliding on the wire.
It's so squeaky.
Okay, well, let's draw the depiction of a crocodile. Winning
Okay,
the flag.
I was just thinking that. Looks good. I'm gonna go with the shot.
I'm gonna go with the shot.
I'm just more amused by that's a lovely shark, Jemima. Beautiful. It just looks like it has a squiggly mouth instead of teeth.
Right, so that's the shark. His teeth, right? He's happy. He's not happy. I don't know. He's sad.
I'm hungry.
He's sad because here is a crocodile, right? So there's one hand.
That looks like a bird.
His snappy jaw. He's gonna win, right? He's gonna win. There's blood pouring out everywhere. Wholesome.
This crocodile shark.
Wait, guys.
Oh, and Croc's even on his back.
No? Yeah. Can I do that? I don't know.
It kind of looks like
he's
a
gone into a
elongated
death
bird.
Yeah.
Blood.
That does not say blood.
It does to me, okay?
What did that say?
I know.
It's like
Blood.
a hole.
It's ruining my picture. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. That's really bad. Best. With an A. This is death. No, not death. Dave is the coolest. No, Dave is the best. Shorts. Shorts.
Wow.
Ready?
Who's smoking the shark's mouth?
Me. That's a shark.
Terrible smoke.
Did you say my smoke is terrible? What's that? It's like a cigar. He's a sophisticated shark. Where's his freaking cravat then? So doesn't wear a cravat. Like, do you even know how to draw a cravat? What the hell is that? That is not a cravat.
Shut the fuck up. What is that?
A cravat. It's like a neck thing that comes down here and goes like puffed.
Yeah,
out.
like the guy on MasterChef.
The guy on
Oh,
MasterChef, like
No,
Matt.
I mean, what did Jemima draw?
A cravat. Let's make a cravat on.
I've got a cravat.
Yeah, let's make it.
No, it's a start. It's just a start.
We can make it a cravat though.
Don't choke me.
I don't actually know how to do these, but let's try.
Cravat's basically like you tied in a knot.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cute.
It's like,
Go around again.
Oh god, some people are posting some real bad pictures of me on my Facebook.
and it's like, that is it not?
Right.
And
This is
then,
me as a Rick and Morty character.
there we are. Kind of like cowboy thing,
It's like
but
hide
not
the
as bad.
chips. Oh, I like this style. I'm gonna keep it. I don't know about the fluffy thing in my neck for you.
I don't know what that is, but.
Kind of what
Can I draw on this board? I've always wanted to draw on this board.
Me too.
Just do it.
I got to in a lesson you guys were.
That was really neat to that fire. Really neat.
You know Daniel's still there.
Oh, I want to do it.
Draw a dick.
You just go to the eraser. Just draw it and then
Exactly,
we
like,
go
that's too
yeah,
loud.
that's
You
the
probably heard it.
Seriously, Dave, come back before class finishes, or I'm gonna leave you. I have spring rolls to eat. That's
Mine just
lovely
never seen
part.
one, so she doesn't know what to draw.
I never shot him before.
I just want to be rude. I thought he was coming.
Just right over the top of everything.
This is all you fuck with.
Oh, it doesn't do two things at once.
Quick, 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 quick.
Okay, thank you, Bon. Okay, cheers, bye. Oh dear. Obviously,
We didn't draw what Daniel told us to draw, so we're saying otherwise.
Yeah, no, don't watch the recording.
you know, there was a chance today that the head of North Coast TAFE was going to join us. I hope she hasn't tuned in because I sent her the invite. So I just checked. No, we're fine. It's just family because I'd have a lot of explaining to do, and I don't know what I'm going to have to do with this recording before I post it. Is going to have to edit it.
Yeah, you're going to have to cut out the last 4 minutes.
Righto.
Because Daniel said dip.
Ah.
No.
I'm sorry about that, Annika. That too, because I was talking to you in that phone call. That was just another
Wish
teacher.
Annika happy birthday. No, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Oh, really?
Yes.
She's 18 today.
Wow.
Big
Woo.
night.
And I'm surprisingly still here for something.
Yeah. What did you think? You might go off and party.
Oh, that's
Well, it's a
tomorrow
long weekend, so I was
Oh,
like, may as
no.
well come to TAFE today.
I hope you get back here
and
on
then spend the
Tuesday.
next 5 days munted.
Oh dear.
Great.
I never did anything like that when I was 18.
I feel like you lied.
I did. I went and did all my assignments.
I drew my depiction of the shark.
I did my reports. Got on my reports
but they
done.
rubbed it out.
I'm
I'll
glad.
probably get really drunk tonight. And then my
Annika, can we maybe just postpone your celebrations until after we get your investigation report and your other report? So that's what I was talking about. Is you said you're doing this over a longer period.
Yeah.
So if you don't get it all done before the break, we can do it in the beginning of next term, but it will stop you from doing the 400 level biology this year.
When is break? When's it start?
Unless we get you to finish those 2 assessments in the first week back.
Okay. Yeah. I can probably.
Would you like to be doing the biology in semester 2?
Yeah.
Right. So the plan is we still try and get you to finish
Yeah.
biology this semester.
Yeah,
and then
I will be
or
working on it
first,
while
so
away.
it means that when you come back, you need. I'll be emailing you saying, "Are you back? And can you now do
Yeah.
this quiz? And can you send me your report?"
Yeah.
So
I'll
what
be
you're
working on my
officially doing
reports
is you're
and stuff while I'm
asking
away,
now
so when
for
I
an
finish them,
extension.
I will send them. Yeah.
And the reason for the extension is
That's
because
great.
you've got this sort of family sort of thing set up. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. It's going to take you away from
Yeah.
TAFE.
Oh, this is okay.
Why did you write wobble wobble dub dub?
Okay.
Sorry, Dave.
It's very hard to clean those boards sometimes.
We can clean the wobble wobble
Yeah, you
dub
can.
dub
Yes,
dub
please.
dub.
If you want to use the board, clean them both, so that the next teacher that comes in has a clean slate. Daniel, I think we're finished here. Do you have any other questions?
No, I don't.
All right, so you're all going to be prepared for next week. I think you said you're passing through here.
I've spoken to Anne. Due to some difficulties back at home, I'm unable to go up anymore.
All right,
I've
so
seen Rick and Morty 2 and 3.
then what will happen? I'm going. Have you got a printer at home?
Sorry?
You got a printer at home?
Yes, I do.
All right. So you'll have to do your report from home.
Yeah.
I won't be here. Say tune into the live stream.
Sorry.
Class.
All right.
Okay. Now, what about your maths test? You got a maths test you have to do at some time?
Next week.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it. I'm gonna go to Wollongbar the week after and do that. Because I'm unable to do it.
Yeah, righto. Yeah, righto. Well, we'll keep you in tune about whether you need me to help you with the maths test.
Yep.
All right, I'll let you go, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.